welcome. This is rooflemonger, and my friends, today I want to talk Guilty Gear Strive, and I want to talk about the perceived lack of defensive options in Guilty Gear Strive. This has been blowing up for a few days now on Twitter, and I want to come and weigh down on this with my own opinion on the matter, because I find, in a way, both sides are right. Is there a lot of defensive options in Guilty Gear Strive? Yes. However, does it feel like sometimes you have no options at all? Yes, I also think that is the case. So let's talk about it. So now let's look at it this way. If defensive options are indeed very weak in Guilty Gear Strive, let's look at how many defensive options exactly we have. So first up here, we can block, right? Hold back the block, simple enough. Air blocking too, not every fighting game has air blocking, Guilty Gear does. So that's, pretty basic. Moving on, we have instant block. Instant block, to be fair, realistically is not really a big deal at all in this game. The window to instant block is 2 frames, and that's it, and that's not enough to realistically do it. Flawless blocking in Mortal Kombat 11 is 3 frames, and even then, flawless blocking can be pretty difficult, and there's actually a lot of ways to trick the game to get the flawless blocks to work, and even with all that, it's still difficult at the best of times, right? So instant block, we can kind of write that one off, right? We have faultless defense. So this is very handy. This is increased pushback on block. So certain people doing, like whatever block string, you'll be pushed out further than you used to be. Certain moves got around this very easily, like Soul Stand S, although that has since been nerfed, so whatever. And also negates all chip damage. Very important and very underutilized, as we'll talk about later on, right? So flawless defense is, I would agree, a strong option. We can burst. Burst is the ultimate get off me, right? But bursts are definitely few and far between. And obviously, if baited, you're kind of dead on block, right? But still, it is the ultimate get off me move, and limited obviously for a reason. We have invincible backdashes. So frame 1 of every single character in the game's backdash is indeed just 100% invincible. The issue with this is invincible backdashes are in no way created equal in this game. The amount of invincibility every character has is different from character to character. Generally speaking, the big characters, Gold Lewis, Nagoriyuki, Potemkin, these characters have the most invincible backdashes, and characters that are very strong, very fast tend to have less invulnerable backdashes, to the point where, outside of maybe trying to just evade a throw, the backdash isn't all that useful at all, because most moves just have enough active frames to hit you out of it, and just hit you once the invincibility runs out. We have forward and punch, the 6P. This offers upper body invincibility. Although not exactly frame 1, does take a couple frames to go in, but still, if you know, say, a very specific strike is coming your way, then you can easily beat it out, right? It's great for counterplay. So technically it's more of an active form of defense, but I will still very easily consider this a form of defense, right? It's counterplay, so it's very valid. The thing is, obviously, this is another character-to-character issue. Some people's forward punch, or 6P, is much more valuable than others, right? There is definitely feast and famine between the roster when it comes to the forward punch, because some people got good ones and some people do not. As far as defense goes, I will definitely count a throw. A throw is a very strong defensive option. Why? Because it's 2-frame startup. It's very fast for a basic throw, right? So if you close in and you do anything that's a little bit negative, right? Say you spaced your jump attack poorly so it hit higher than you thought, you hit the ground a little bit negative, you're in for potentially a bad time, right? Or any pressure that's a little bit negative is also subject to a throw. So throw is a defensive option that's quite strong. Combined with the fact of the rule of 5, if you remember the rule of 5. In many situations when you're getting up or you just block attack, for the first 5 frames of your recovery after the initial block or get up or whatever, you yourself cannot be thrown, yet you can throw the enemy, right? So there's definitely a lot of situations after blocking something where you both recover, you can throw them, but they can't throw you. So throws are definitely a strong enough defensive option. This is definitely one of the more feast or famine ones here, but we have strike and vulnerable moves, so your uppercut style of moves, right? The thing is, There's a few characters in the game blessed with these moves, and most of the cast does not have the option. So I feel like if you feel the game's defensive options are weak, it may really depend on if you play a character with an uppercut, a strike, invincible reversal. Because all of a sudden, a lot more options become available to you if you have one of these styles of moves. If you don't, things are definitely a lot more rougher on defense. That said as well, command grabs. Command grabs are throw invulnerable. So if you're worried about, throw base pressure, all that kind of stuff, just like the uppercut is strike invulnerable, the command grab is throw invulnerable. So that is another layer of defense. And finally, one of the best options we have is the yellow Roman cancel. Yes, like all Roman cancels, it does indeed take 50% of a meter, but it pushes the enemy back, which is good, gets them off you, and also, on top of that, it kind of flips the script, because a yellow Roman cancel is very advantage if it hits. I believe it's plus 10, right? So the enemy now has their back to the wall. It is also, just so you know, it is also a guard break, the state. So it removes the rule of 5, all that kind of stuff, so you can throw them right after they get out of it, and like all that kind of stuff. So it's very good. It's a very powerful tool, but of course limited by the fact you can't exactly do it all that often. Meter gain, realistically, maybe at best, especially if your back's to the wall in the middle of a round, you can do it twice a round. And if you're really getting steamrolled, you only get one of them. That's it, right? But as it stands, these are a lot of your defensive options, and there is a lot of them. So now that we just kind of listed through everything, right? Like, it seems like Guilty Gear Strive is completely overflowing. Just absolutely dripping with defensive options. How could anyone complain that defense is weak in Guilty Gear, right? After listing off all that kind of stuff. Well, here comes the other side of the coin. Yes, there is a lot of options. Absolutely. But not every single option is as viable for every single character. As a good deal of the options, they vary character to character. Quality of your backdash, quality of your forward P, your 6P. If you have a strike reversal move, a strike invincible reversal move that is at all, that all wildly varies character to character. And also, there's a lot in this game to straight up punish defense. Now, Guilty Gear Strive obviously is a very offensive based game in the end, right? This is certainly not the land of your E-Honda down backing in the corner, winning out the clock. The game was never designed to be that way. One of the reasons the way it is like the risk gauge, right? You can't afford to keep blocking. Simple as that, right? Guilty Gear is always going to be an offensive-based game in the end, right? No matter how many defensive options we got. And the risk gauge is one of the things that really hammers that point home. You block too much, you will pay the penalty. And Lord forbid, your risk gauge actually gets cranked out the max. Because if it gets cranked out the max, next hit will probably kill you, right? But, defense is weak in that no matter how many options we have, you are straight up just, in the end, not incentivized to block, no matter what. Like, that is just how it is. Now, yes, to be absolutely fair, as far as the risk gauge is concerned anyways, you can indeed faultless defense to help negate your risk going up, right? But that's another penalty layered at your feet, because if you're trying to defend yourself in this one aspect of the game, you are crippling yourself in another, and that it'll take a lot of your meter, right? And whoever has more meter in the way is definitely leading the match, right? If you lose your meter to get out of a situation where you don't want to raise the misc, you're curtailing your ability to actually win the game in the end. Another very strong offensive feature that punishes being, any kind of complacent is the guard break. And the guard break, it gets around a lot of all these defensive options we've talked about. Guard breaks, frankly, just get around a lot of the defensive options in the game. So, first off here, guard break moves, generally speaking, tend to do a lot of chip damage. And depending on the character, like Gold Lewis can win whole matches based off you just blocking everything. You successfully blocked, yes, but he did so much chip damage, you don't really feel like a winner in the end, right? So, for example here, we're just going to block 4 Behemoth Typhoons. Alright, here we go. So that's our 4th one. Now look at how much damage Eno took. Like, I technically didn't even hit you yet, and yet you've lost 1/3 of your life, right? So the guard break's doing very good in that regard. And yes, absolutely, you can faultless defense for any guard break to just not take that chip damage. So regardless of the character, you won't take the chip. However, it doesn't remove the guard break state. The state, regardless of you doing your faultless defense, is still applied. And also, guard breaks are not subject to the pushback of a faultless defense. So one of the main things of a faultless defense is you're pushing your enemy out, right? And in the case of a guard break, you're not pushing them out at all. The only thing you're getting is the reduced damage, you're not taking damage, but the other features of the faultless defense is not coming into play. Another layer yet is the guard break removes the rule of 5. Normally, in regular block stun, you're protected, right? You can't be thrown for the first 5 frames after you get out of block stun. So me being Potemkin and all, this removes my ability to like throw you the frame you get out of block stun, right? It's to save your life. However, guard breaks, they don't take that into mind, right? A guard break removes that defensive benefit. So I can throw you the frame of animation. You leave the guard break, unlike every other kind of block in this game. So now, all of a sudden, it's a lot scarier, right? You don't have that inherent protection anymore. So the guard break, once again, is just removing layer after layer after layer after layer of protection from you. And, you know, maybe rightfully so. It is called guard break after all. It definitely has a negative connotation for the person who just guarded, like, at the very least, right? But that is a big deal for you. But I feel a lot of maybe the crux of the original argument of defense being weak in Guilty Gear Strive comes from just character-specific stuff. One of the biggest blessings of Guilty Gear Strive is every character is wildly different from each other, right? So there's no Shoto case, right? You don't got like 3 or 4 characters that are like basically the same game plan with a couple differences. But that also leads to some of the issues. So someone like Milia. Alright, so, you know, that's the setup, right? It's Mix-Up Town. And once you are now in Mix-Up Town, what do your defensive options really mean, right? Your defensive option is hope you guessed heads or tails correctly. Like that giant list we went over, not too much of it's going to really apply in this situation unless you happen to have a burst. And once again, that's kind of in rare supply, I suppose, right? So due to Milia's nature, her game plan, all the myriad of defensive options we have doesn't really matter too much when we come to the crux of her game plan. Another example here is Potemkin. So Potemkin has the Garuda Impact and has the guard break and all that we talked about earlier. And it's also plus 19 on block, which is a lot. And it's even more plus on block in a lot of situations because if I do something as basic as this here. Alright, so they wake up into Meaty Garuda Impact, right? Oh, that even like was a great combo. So Meaty Garuda Impact hits later in the active frames, making it even more plus. And so plus, in fact, that if you try to escape the second Garuda Impact, you can't. You jump out, you get hit. You try to hit a button, you get hit. If you are anything less than Invincible Reversal, you get hit, right? That's kind of the deal. So all of a sudden, now he basically gets a second Garuda Impact for free. That's basically how it works. And then there's situations like this. So you say you Garuda Impact, right? Blue Roman Cancel, kick, Garuda Impact. The Blue Roman Cancel made that Garuda Impact so plus, the next Garuda Impact is guaranteed. So here we go. I'm going to try to up back out of this. I couldn't even jump in time. Couldn't even jump in time. So all of a sudden, I had to block the first one. I had to block the second one. He Blue Roman canceled it. And then that means I had to block the third one, and I had to block the fourth one. So let's take this to its logical conclusion, right? So if I had 100% meter, you would have to block 6 consecutive Garuda impacts after block, and there's really not much you can do about it. Like, look at the health, and that's Potemkin health that far down, right? All I did to start that was just a regular throw, and regular throw into the Kara Garuda Impact, which is not that difficult, really. So, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of your life. And all the defensive options we talked about earlier, how much of those actually mattered? Not too many. We made a whole video about dealing with Groot Impact, so there is a couple things you can do, but you're basically taking damage no matter what. And take someone like Zato, just due to his core game design. With Zato, against someone who's actually very proficient with the character, which I definitely am not, right? But against people who are proficient with the character, it feels like it's never your turn. Like, it feels like no matter what you're doing, just he's always on top of you, Eddie's always doing his thing. Like, it feels kind of hopeless sometimes, right? Now, once you learn the matchup, once you learn, you know, the ins and outs, sure, it gets a lot more reasonable, it gets a lot more manageable. But until you put in those until you put in those hours, it just feels like a giant mess. It just feels like your back's against the wall and there's nothing you can do. It creates a fairly helpless feeling, right? So yeah, you put in the time, it gets better. You put in the time, you get the knowledge, things get more workable. But until that point, it's kind of a feel bad kind of situation. And when it comes to you thinking if you have defense or not, you definitely feel like the only thing you can do is block and hold on for your life and nothing else is going to save you. I don't think defense is weak overall, but I do believe it really depends character to character. What's the matchup, right? Characters that have invincible reversals simply have an easier life when it comes to defense than characters that don't. That is just cut and dry. That's the end of that story, right? If your character doesn't have an invincible reversal, things are going to be a bit rougher and you definitely have to think a lot harder when it comes to defense. Also, when it comes, you know, your backdash, your 6P, all that kind of stuff, if you're Gold Lewis, right, your 6P, you're not going to believe in that move. You're not going to feel too good about it, right? Versus if you're someone like Ramlethal, Ramlethal has one of the best counter poke 6Ps in the game. Sure, hers is pretty dang good, right? And it's also very serviceable anti-air as well. So it really depends character to character. But I definitely don't think defense is weak. But I do think certain aspects maybe could be a little bit better, but it really depends on what character you are versus the character you happen to be fighting. That said, there's definitely certain things you can do to make your life easier. And that comes to your faultless defense use and your yellow Roman cancel use. One thing about faultless defense is you really got to appreciate the pushback because it makes things more significant than you might think otherwise. Let's show you an example. So in the corner with Eno, very common setup here. She'll just do like the hover float slash and then do forward heavy slash, right? Easy enough. Understand, that's fine. But if we even just faultless defense the first hit, all of a sudden the first hit of the kickstand, it no longer connects because she's just far out enough, right? So then all of a sudden now we can kind of use that to our advantage. And now in the same scenario, I now definitely 6P her out of it, for sure. Where before, that was not going to happen. All thanks to that tiny bit of pushback. You might not think it's significant, but trust me, it can definitely change a lot. Characters with a lot of guard break moves and do a lot of chip, right? You don't have to hold down FD the entire time and lose all that meter. You are eligible to just do it right as the move is going to connect. You know, you're still going to lose a lot of meter, right? But at least you won't take all that chip damage. You won't lose half your life in chip, right? You still get guard broken. You don't get the pushback, but at least you don't have to hold it down the entire time. You can like kind of smartly choose when to selectively faultless defense to move so you don't take all the chip damage. And in situations, it's not one of our core defensive mechanics, but in situations where you think the guard break's going to happen over and over and over, yes, you cannot yellow Roman cancel a guard break move, right? Try all you want. It's not going to happen. But in these scenarios where you're getting guard break after guard break after guard break, and it gets a little scary and a little hard to deal with, you can use a blue Roman cancel in between, right? Because the thing is, when it's guard break and guard break and guard break, you're scared to hit a button. Because if they do anything but the guard break next and try to challenge you with a button, they're going to counter hit you and you're going to die. Especially Gold Lewis. Maybe Gold Lewis, we can talk about whether or not, you know, how good of a character he is. But in this scenario, this is exactly what he's fishing for the whole game. His whole game is to get you here, right? And if you get counter hit, if you try to hit a button and stop the next Behemoth Typhoon, and he instead does stand slash into another Behemoth Typhoon, counter hits you, that's probably game over. But instead we can do something like this. We can blue Roman cancel. So at that point, if we blue Roman cancel, we'll still be able to block the stand slash in time if that's what's coming, right? And if we catch him doing another Behemoth Typhoon, then we can just straight up knock him out of it, right? So technically the blue Roman cancel is not one of the core defensive mechanics, but you can definitely use it in a defensive way in a time when a lot of your other defensive options are taken away from you. So yeah, in the end, Guilty Gear Strive is definitely a game that favors offense over defense. I don't think anyone can argue that, right? But is defense weak? Well, sometimes, depending on the match. But you can definitely use your defensive options in more creative ways, perhaps ways you're not thinking about, right? Even if it's something as simple as using upper body invincibility to get past a move or something, there are options there. You're very rarely in a no-win situation. You can, though, sometimes be in a no-win situation. I'm not gonna lie to you, that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? And sometimes when it just comes to mix-ups, sometimes you got a coin flip. That's the nature of fighting games, right? There'll never not be the fighting game where there's not going to be the coin flip mix-up, right? So that's just how it is. But yeah, so I hope this has broadened your knowledge on the subject and informed you a little bit on one way of the debate or the other. And once again, post in the comments below what you think about all this, because I would definitely love to hear it. And otherwise, that's the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. Go out and play some Guilty Gear.